Adam Smith was a Scottish philosopher who became a political economist in the midst of the Scottish Enlightenment. He is best known for the Theory of Moral Sentiments, 1759, and An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations, 1776. The latter, usually referred to as The Wealth of Nations, is one of the earliest and the most famous treatises on industry and commerce and one of the major contributors to modern academic discipline economics. Smith's arguments against mercantilism and in favor of free trade were a stark challenge to much of the protectionism, tariffs, and gold hoarding that prevailed in the mid-18th century. Today, he's often called the father of modern economics. Ricardo joined his father to work on the London Stock Exchange at the age of 14 and quickly became successful at speculating in stocks and real estate. After reading Smith's The Wealth of Nations in 1799, he took an interest in economics. Ricardo became a member of the British Parliament, representing a borough of Ireland in 1819. His greatest work, an essay on the influence of a low price of corn on the profits of stock, 1815, argued to repeal the corn laws at the time to better spread the wealth, and he followed it with Principles of Political Economy and Taxation, 1817. Marshall may be the least recognized of the great economists as he did not champion any radical theories. However, he is credited with attempting to apply rigorous mathematics to economics to turn economics into more of a science than a philosophy. Despite his emphasis on math, Marshall strove to make his work accessible to regular people. His Economics of Industry, 1879, became widely used in England as a curriculum. He also spent almost 10 years working on the more scientific principles of economics, his most important work. He is most credited with perpetuating supply and demand curves, marginal utility, and marginal production costs into a unified model. Referred as the giant economist, he accepted a lectureship at Cambridge that was personally funded by Alfred Marshall, whose supply and demand curves were the basis for much of Keynes' work. He is particularly remembered for advocating government spending and monetary policy to mitigate the adverse effects of economic recessions, depressions, and booms. During World War I, Keynes worked on the credit terms between Britain and its allies, was a representative at the peace treaty signed in Versailles. Keynes was almost bankrupted by the stock market crash of 1929, but was able to rebuild his fortune. In 1936, Keynes wrote his seminal work, General Theory of Employment, Interest, and Money, which advocated government intervention to promote consumption and investing, also helped alleviate the global Great Depression that was raging at the time. This work has been deemed as the launch of modern macroeconomics. Milton Friedman was the last of 4 children born to Jewish immigrants from Austria-Hungary. After getting his Bachelor of Arts degree at Rutgers and his master's at the University of Chicago, he went to work for the New Deal, a series of programs designed by U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt to provide relief to and recovery from the effects of the Great Depression. While in favor of the New Deal overall, he was opposed to most government programs and price controls, more of a laissez-faire economist. He was for minimizing the role of government in a free market. These ideas formed the basis of his book Capitalism and Freedom, 1962. He is perhaps best known for promoting free markets and credited with the concept of modern currency markets, unregulated and unpegged to precious metals standards. He believed that introducing capitalism to totalitarian countries would lead to the betterment of society. A winner of the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economic Sciences in 1976, he was adamant about the link between money supply and inflation. Abhijit Banerjee was born in Mumbai to a family of economists. Received his economics education in India before obtaining his PhD from Harvard University. He now teaches at MIT, where he met his future wife, the French-born economist Esther Duflo. In 2003 they co-founded the Poverty Action Lab with Sendhil Mullainathan. The Poverty Action Lab is most famous for its experimental approach to developmental economics. Rather than relying on mathematical models or observational data, Banerjee and Duflo created randomized trials to determine the effectiveness of government spending on teaching materials, vaccinations, and other policies. Banerjee and Duflo were awarded the Nobel Prize for Economics in 2019. Nouriel Roubini was born in Iran to an Orthodox Jewish family, which later emigrated to Israel. Since then, he has also lived in Turkey, Italy, and the United States, describing himself as a global nomad. He earned his economics BA in Milan, before earning a PhD at Harvard University. He now teaches at NYU's Stern School of Business. In addition to research, Roubini has also contributed to economic policymaking at institutions like the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, and the Federal Reserve. He also served on the White House Council of Economic Advisers during the Clinton administration, as well as for the Treasury Department. Roubini is most famous for accurately predicting the 2008 financial crisis. He warned that the real estate bubble would soon crash, causing a major recession. He is also known for his adverse position on Bitcoin, which he has described the mother of all scams. He has also criticized useless blockchain technology, at a time when the market was still highly optimistic about distributed ledger offerings. Hernando de Soto was born in Peru, but he spent most of his childhood in Europe following that country's military coup. Most famous as the architect of Peru's neoliberal economic reforms, however, his work has impacted the entire Western Hemisphere. In 1979, de Soto returned to Peru and founded the Institute for Liberty and Democracy, a neoliberal think tank heavily influenced by Friedrich Hayek and Milton Friedman. With generous funding from the U.S. government, the ILD promoted free market policies and legislation to address the country's informal property relations and arbitration. His work inspired the Washington Consensus and supported the creation of NAFTA. De Soto's contributions have been acknowledged by U.S. Presidents Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton. Janet Yellen was born in Brooklyn to a family of Polish-descended Jews. She earned her bachelor's in economics at Brown, before earning an MA and PhD at Yale University. Much of Yellen's research career was spent studying labor markets and the effects of government policy. She has advocated in favor of a Keynesian economic philosophy, favoring economic stimulus and a moderate position on inflation, while also favoring reforms to certain government entitlements. In 1994, she was appointed to the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, where served until she became chair of the Council of Economic Advisers. Since then, she has served several other roles in the Federal Reserve, culminating in the chair of the Federal Reserve from 2014 to 2018. She was appointed U.S. Treasury Secretary by President Biden in 2021.